Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Yesko. I am the director of the Pathways into Education Center, and I'm going to talk a little bit about applying for New York State teacher certification upon the completion of your program. So first of all, congratulations on your upcoming graduation. This is great news. You guys have all worked really hard, and it's super exciting. And so I'm here to make sure that once you finish your program, that you are applying in the correct ways for your certification to make sure that all of that hard work pays off. So I always like to start with a little caveat that New York State Education Department regulations do change. I'll even talk about some of those changes that have happened recently. And so it's always a good idea if you're not applying for certification right now, to see if anything about this process or the regulations have changed since this presentation. And you can always reach out to us in the PI Center with any questions that you might have. So as many of you know, teacher certification is required. It's a way to show that you've met all of the requirements for your profession and that you're able to work in a New York State public school within your areas of certification. Just as an overview, a lot of you already know this, but there's initial certification, which you receive in this case, when you complete your program, when you receive an institutional recommendation, which I'll talk about, when you've passed the appropriate exams, complete the required workshops, and have fingerprint clearance. I do want to mention, and many of you probably already know this, that there is an updated workshop for the child abuse identification or the mandated reporter training that's required for all teachers and school leaders. And so if you haven't yet done the new workshop, your degree cannot be conferred and your certification will not go through. So that's very important that you do. Um, the new workshop is being offered through the Office of Child and Family Services, so OCFS. They offer that for free, and it is definitely up to date with the new requirements. So that's what we've been recommending for all of our students. And there is a way to make sure that that gets uploaded to your Teach account. So if you had any questions about that, or if you've done the workshop and you don't see it on your Teach account, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to help with that. But you know, that's just another important update. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. And then you can receive professional certification, which is the final and more permanent type of certification that you need in New York State when you have met the requirements for initial, when you have 3 years of paid full-time classroom teaching experience in your areas of certification and your mentored experience. So you have 5 years from the time that you earn your initial certification to earn your professional certification, and some of you are well on your way to that. So first and foremost, apply for graduation. This is really important. A lot of times you guys are so good about this, but I had a year where I was doing this, and there was a bunch of students from a particular program that forgot to apply for graduation. So I always just like to remind you to apply for graduation and make sure that your degree will be awarded. And then I also want to point out that everything that I'm going to talk about today and go over with you in great detail is available on like a tips sheet. So like one page with all of this great information for you to easily follow along, is available on the PI Center website. So I'll show you where you can find that. So you'll go to our website, and click over here on apply for certification and find a program code. You will click on applying on Teach cheat sheets and find your area of certification. So obviously for our literacy students, we're looking at the literacy folder. For those of you in special education and literacy too, we have your programs in the literacy folder, in the childhood folder, and in the special education folder, so you can find it anywhere. So let's just go to the literacy folder and we'll take a look here. Because there have been some recent changes to New York State Education Department guidelines around literacy and special education certification, which I'll talk about. You just pay very close attention to the labels on these tips sheets. So a lot of you will be graduating or will be selecting the Masters in Literacy, birth through 6 or 5 through 12 after fall 2023 and using the instructions there. And for the special education and literacy 2 students, you're going to be looking at the Masters in Special Education and Literacy 2, spring 2024 to summer 2026. So that's your tips sheet. And so the sheet basically just gives you, again, like those step-by-step instructions that we'll go over today, but all in one place. And make sure to read these carefully and follow all the instructions that are listed here. All right. Oops, sorry. All right. Something else that I recommend that you do just to make sure that you're meeting all of the requirements for the certifications that you're applying for is to check the certification requirements. This is done through the Office of Teaching Initiatives website search certification requirements tool. And so this requirement allows you to pull from the drop-down menus the different areas of your certification. So you're always going to select classroom teacher and then select your area. So we'll just do literacy to take a look here. We'll select birth through grade 6, just for an example here. Literacy birth through grade 6, and we'll select initial certification. Something to note is that if you have met the experiential requirements for your certification, so let's say you were previously certified in childhood, and you're using this master's degree to help earn professional certification, if you have your 3 years of experience and you will very soon have your master's degree, you can apply directly for professional certification in literacy rather than applying for initial and then professional. If you have any questions about that, just let me know. I also want to say, and I probably should have said this at the beginning, so I apologize. I'm not physically there tonight. Most of the time I do try to be there live on Zoom with you guys. Today just was not a day that worked with my schedule, so I'm recording this right now. So usually I'm there to answer questions live. Since I'm not there right now, I'm going to recommend that you write down any questions that you have as I'm going through this presentation, especially if it's like something that's really specific to you and your situation, and then email me those questions right away, just so that you don't forget them and so that there's no confusion around what needs to be done. I'm always really happy to answer questions, whether that be via email or a quick Zoom meeting with you. So please write down any questions that you have about this process as I'm going through today's presentation. Okay, so back to the certification requirement search. You're going to hit search, and all of the different pathways that you can use to earn a given certification will be listed. Because our program is approved by New York State to lead to certification, our pathway is the Approved Teacher Preparation Program pathway, and it lists all of the requirements, right? So you need to complete your program, you need an institutional recommendation, which I'll talk about in a little bit. You need to take the Educating All Students test. A lot of you probably already took that when you earned your initial certification, but for those of you who are in special education and literacy 2, you would need this test. And then also the literacy CST. So for every certification area, there is a content and specialty test or a CST. For those of you in the Special Education and Literacy 2 program, there's a CST for students with disabilities, and there are CSTs for childhood education. So you can use this tool to search for the different requirements for all 3 of those certifications to see what exams and other requirements are needed. You'll see the DASA workshop listed here. The other 2 workshops that you need for literacy certification are that new child abuse workshop and the school violence prevention and intervention workshop, which are graduation requirements here. So that's why they're not listed. And then of course your fingerprint clearance, which many of you already have. So that's just a really helpful tool on the OTI website. So when you're applying, you're going to log into your Teach account. And this is sort of what your homepage should look like. This is what mine looks like when I'm looking at it from the student's perspective. So you would start your application by clicking on Apply for Certificate. And then there's a page that will come up. I'm not going to read this to you guys, but I highly recommend that you read this. It has important information about the application process that will help you through it. So definitely read, and it gives you a good overview of the whole process. So you're going to update your personal and education information. This is what that page looks like, and you'll click on edit personal information and edit education. This is the information that you would add for the Masters in Literacy to edit um, your education information. And then, so you'll see just, this is all drop-down menus on the Teach website on your Teach account. And so you'll pull all of these different things from the drop-down menu, and then same thing for the Masters in Special Education and Literacy 2. It only allows you to select one option from the drop-down menu for major. So because this is the self-reported education, it doesn't matter quite as much. So I've just selected students with disabilities as the major for the program. This is what that page actually looks like in your Teach account, just so that you guys have an idea. This is an example with using childhood education as an example of the things that I pulled down from the drop-down menu, just to sort of show you guys this is what it should look like. Then you're going to, when you click through, you'll click add, it'll bring you to select certificate, and this is where you're going to choose the certificate that you're going to apply for. You would select the following from the drop-down menus there if you are in the Masters in Literacy. So again, you're always in the classroom teacher certification. The literacy is the subject area. You would select either birth through 6 or 5 through 12, or you would apply for both. So you'll see down here, if you have completed the birth through 12 track here, you do not select the all grades certificate. This is a completely different certificate that I'll talk about in a little bit. Our students who have completed certification for birth through grade 12 will apply separately for a birth through 6 certificate and a 5 through 12 certificate. And then whatever you're eligible for, initial or professional, and then your program code, which is listed here. For the Masters in Special Education and Literacy 2, you apply for the 3 certificates that you earn separately. So you apply for childhood education, you would apply for students with disabilities grades 1 through 6, and literacy birth through grade 6 initial. It's the same program code for all 3 certifications that you apply for, but you do have to apply for all 3 of them separately, and then you'll come back and apply for professional in all 3 areas when you have met those requirements. You'll sign the affidavit, you will confirm and sign the application, and then the last step is to make a payment. However, we advise our students to wait to do this step. I'll talk to you a little bit more about why. It's sort of like a complex issue with the Teach online system and their sort of technology difficulties that they're having. But you can do all of the steps up until now and complete the application without paying, and then come back and pay for the certification application at a later time. So it certainly makes sense to have the application fully ready to go and then pay for it when that time is appropriate. So the next thing you're going to do is request a university recommendation. So this is the institutional recommendation that was listed as a certification requirement. When we did the search certification requirements tool, it's a necessary part of the application that it's not a letter of recommendation written by the institution. It's just, it's basically, we go into your Teach account and we confirm that you completed the degree that you say that you did that leads to certification. So that confirmation is needed in order for them to award your certificate. You can submit, we have to have a request from you to enter this recommendation because we have to access your personal information and your social security number to enter it. So we need your permission. So you have to request it. You can request the recommendation at any time. So you could request it now if you wanted to, but we cannot enter the recommendation into your Teach account until your degree is officially conferred. The technical degree conferral date is May 18th of this year. However, that's not when degrees are actually conferred. Degree clearance is a manual process. So there is a person who, or people who have to review each and every single degree application that the university receives. So grades are due on May 18th, and at that time, those people can start to review the applications for degrees. So it usually takes about 2 to 4 weeks after grades are due. It's usually closer to 2, but I like to give a little bit of wiggle room. It's usually about 2 weeks after grades are due that degrees are conferred. And at that time, I'm able to enter the recommendation in your Teach account. Uh, Um, you should request your recommendation even if you don't plan to apply for certification right now. So let's say you want to wait to apply for professional certification in literacy until you've met all of the requirements for professional certification. Or maybe you don't plan to start working yet, or you're going to apply somewhere out of state. No matter what, I recommend that you request this recommendation because it doesn't go away, it doesn't expire. It just sits in your Teach account for whenever you do decide to apply for certification. So this is the link to request the recommendation. You can also find this on that tips sheet. So this link is right up here to request the recommendation. And it looks just like this. And you would click on teacher, leader, or school psychologist certification. You would fill out all of the information to request the recommendation. Um, this is sort of the important part, right? So you need to wait until the recommendation has been submitted to pay for your application and teach. The Office of Teaching Initiatives is asking that you don't submit your application until your recommendation has been entered by the university. Paying for your application before the recommendation is submitted could lead to the application being assigned the wrong pathway and delaying the time to the issuance of your certificate. It doesn't always happen, but I've seen it happen a couple of times, and apparently there's no way to know when Teach would sort of make this error. And so to be on the safe side, we're requesting that you don't submit the application until the recommendation is entered. So it wouldn't go through without the recommendation anyway, so it doesn't really change the timeline. It's just something you have to be aware of and to know when to pay for the application. So you can always check to see if your recommendation has been entered by going to Teach Home and clicking on account information. So if you go back to that Teach Home page, if you click on the account information right here, then you can click on, I think, view recommendations. Um, yeah, college recommendations, and it'll show you would see a recommendation from the University at Albany in your area. So in literacy, in special education, in childhood education. If for some reason during the application process you're asked to select a pathway, the only pathway that your application should be on is the approved teacher preparation program pathway. So, for those of you who are in the Masters in Literacy program, you have a prior area of initial certification that you came to this program already holding. You wouldn't use this same process to apply for professional certification in your original areas of initial. Instead, you would use the certificate progression pathway. So it's similar. You still apply through your Teach account. It's just when you're asked for a program code, you would select the option stating that you don't have a program code. So it says no, I have not completed nor am I enrolled in an approved teacher preparation program, blah, 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 blah. And so you would click that box and you would do this for each prior certificate and follow the steps afterward. When I mentioned the changes to literacy certification, I should also mention for those in the special education and literacy 2 program that these changes are also apply to special education. So in September of 2022, the New York State Board of Regents established a literacy all grades certificate and a special education or a students with disabilities all grades certificate. This will do away with certifications that are grade specific. So there will not be a birth through 6 literacy or a 5 through 12 literacy. There won't be a special education 1 through 6 or 7 through 12. Instead, those certificates will be all grades, pre-K to grade 12. Anyone who holds the grade specific certifications those certificates will still be valid for the remainder of your career. You will hold those certificates. Um, but just be aware that New York State will no longer issue certificates in literacy birth through 6 or 5 through 12 after September 1st of 2027. So you would have to apply for those certificates before then. We've made changes to our programs to meet the new requirements for both literacy and special education. So, in future years, students would be certified in those all grades in those areas. This is an example just using that same search certification requirements page of the current requirements for the literacy all grades certificate. And so you can sort of view there's specific coursework required. There's a college practicum that requires experience across the grade ranges or 1 year of experience as a literacy specialist. And that can be in any of the grade areas. Still that CST, the workshops, the fingerprint clearance. And for students with disabilities, we can just take a quick look just so that you have an idea. The students with disabilities, all grades. Um, you can do the same process to look up what's needed. If this is just really like if you're interested in earning that certificate, and it would be through the additional classroom teaching certificate for those who already hold a valid certificate. Again, there's some coursework involved. A lot of times, like this coursework may have already been completed through your program. I don't work for NYSED, so I can't say that for sure, but you can take a look at the coursework. You'll see that the CST um, for students with disabilities and the multi-subject test are required, the different workshops, and your fingerprint clearance. So just to give you an idea. Oh, where did we leave off here? Sorry. All right. Some other helpful information, checking the status of your application. This website is super helpful to check the status of your application. It basically lets you know what each of the different statuses mean. So if it says not ready for review, this is what it means. If it says review complete pending information, this is what it means. So that you're not sort of like left wondering what's the status of your application. So you can check that at any time after you submit it. The view evaluation history tool can be really helpful. So you'll see it right here. So if there's a link that says view evaluation history, this sort of allows you to take a look and see what aspects of the application are met or unmet. A question that I get pretty frequently that I'll just go over sort of briefly. There are students after completing some of our programs who are interested in getting an additional teaching certificate. So an example of this would be the all grades certificate for literacy or the all grades certificate for students with disabilities. But students can add an additional teaching certificate in any area really, as long as they work to meet the requirements for that new certification area. It's a process that's handled entirely by New York State Education Department, so not by the university. So this is just guidance that I can provide. Any like really specific questions about this process should be directed to NYSED, but it is easier to add an additional certificate after you've already earned your certifications. So once you've earned certification, this is the process that you would go through. So um, with the literacy program, something that's really cool is that students who hold childhood ed or early childhood ed, or even some generalist certificates are able to have some of the requirements for student developmental level coursework met. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to use the example of someone with childhood education certification. That's a pretty common certification that people come into the literacy program with, and it's also a certification that you earn through the Special Education and Literacy 2 program. So you come in with childhood ed cert, and you are interested in adding the early childhood education certification. That's a common one, right? So let's look at the requirements for early childhood education certification. We'll click here, and let's look at the initial. So we would go through the pathway. Additional classroom teaching certificate must hold a valid certificate. And let's just take a look at each of these requirements individually, right? So holds a valid New York State classroom teaching certificate. Great. A lot of you either do hold that or will hold that soon. There's some specific and general college coursework. I can say a lot of teacher prep programs already provide this coursework. I don't work for NYSED, but a lot of times students may have already completed this coursework. And then you need pedagogical core coursework related to the certification area, right? So you need college coursework that is specific to students at the early childhood level. And you need 6 semester hours. That's what SH stands for. And then you also need coursework on teaching literacy skills methods, which through a literacy program, I I'm gonna say I don't work for NYSET again, but it's quite possible that you've taken that course already. But when we're looking at this coursework, the coursework at the student developmental level, um, students who have completed a literacy program for birth through grade 6 would automatically have this requirement marked as met by the state. Now, it used to say this right on their website, but they recently updated their website, so the language is not on the website, but I did get confirmation from New York State Education Department that this requirement would still be marked as met if you have a birth through 6 literacy recommendation. The same is true for someone who holds early childhood and is applying for childhood ed certification. This requirement, the student developmental level coursework for childhood, would be marked as met. And then, so we're looking at the multi-subject test for early childhood, so the CST. And then again, your workshops and your fingerprint clearance. So if you have any questions about this process or the requirements, let me know. I can sort of like walk you through it, talk to you about it. But the process basically involves so looking at the certification requirements and familiarizing yourself, and then submitting an application in the new desired certification area to New York State Education Department. You do not enter a program code when applying for the new certificate area. And if you're given the option, we usually just recommend that you have your application reviewed by BOCES because they typically review applications a little bit faster. Either BOCES or NYSED will complete an evaluation and let you know if there is anything remaining that you would need to earn that new certificate. If there is anything that you need, such as coursework or workshops or tests, they would let you know you meet those requirements and then the certificate will be added. So this is kind of just what I just showed you guys, what it would take to add an additional classroom teaching certificate, what the requirements look like. Um, and what additional certifications can you get? An already certified teacher can apply through this pathway for most any other certificate. I just always like to mention that the further away that certificate is from the certificate that you hold, the more additional requirements you may need to meet in order to earn that certificate. So, for example, if you hold a literacy certification and you want to apply for certification in music, there might be a lot more requirements that you need to meet than if you were to apply for something like childhood or early childhood. If you have any questions about this, I know I covered a lot of information, but you can always reach out directly to me. It's probably best to use my personal email to reach out with your questions. So please feel free to send those along anytime. I'm happy to also meet via Zoom to discuss your questions if you think it warrants more of a discussion. New York State Education Department has a contact form if you're having issues, like technical issues with your Teach account, or if something goes wrong. There's frequently asked questions website right here for those who are applying. And even though I'm not there right now to answer your questions live, please feel free to email me with any and all questions that you have. So thank you very much, and congratulations on your upcoming graduation. And yes, everybody have a wonderful night. Thank you very much.